My channel is sponsored by Rocket Money, which means we will hear more from them somewhere in the middle of the video.
If you haven't heard about this particular phenomena already, honestly, I'm so happy for you. But I have, and you clicked on the video. So now we must suffer from perceiving this insane brain rot together.
It turns out the original video that made me want to make this video has actually been taken down. But in essence, it was a guy saying that any woman who weighs over 130 pounds is objectively overweight and should not be allowed to wear a sundress. But there's a lot of this just across the board. Basically, there are a lot of people saying that any woman over 130 pounds is overweight or obese, or if she's over 130 pounds, bro, I don't fucking want it, bro. Especially from those like man on the street videos that have really blown up on Reels and TikTok recently that are just so great for society. Basically, there's a new internet rhetoric that is just as dumb as many that have come before, saying that women over a certain weight are objectively obese, and if she's over 130 pounds, don't go near her, bro. Now, this video is probably not going to go in the direction that you think it is. I may kick the hornet's nest here, as I have been known to do recently. But let me start by saying this. I'm over 130 pounds. I'm taller than the average woman, but I'm not 6 foot. Despite what my Tinder profile might say. People on the internet at this point have been pretty regularly telling me that I'm too thin. And yet I am objectively obese, apparently. This is weird, but we're gonna do it just to make the point, okay? I'm really sorry about that. Objectively obese. Now, to be just super extra clear, nobody has said, Alanah, you're objectively obese. It's not, this video is not actually going to be about me in any way. I just weigh over 130 pounds. I would have to aggressively starve myself to be less than 130 pounds. And yet everyone over 130 pounds is objectively obese. Or are people just really stupid? I think the camera tracking is so funny. Please tell me if it makes you sick for future videos, but I think it's hilarious. So that's it. This is not going to be a video about how fat shaming is bad and everyone is actually beautiful. I'll definitely touch on how I think people who fat shame pretend to care about health and actually don't really give a fuck. They're just trying to feel superior. It's just a different brand of virtue signaling. But I will start with a stance that I have always held and will continue to share. If you eat poorly, as in a bunch of really calorie-dense foods with virtually no nutritional value, and you don't exercise, you don't get your heart rate up even for a little bit every day, I am going to encourage you to change that because I believe it to be massively beneficial to your quality of life. I'm not going to coddle you. A lot of people are treating their bodies really terribly, and it has a really bad effect on their mental health as well as their physical health. I do not want to encourage that, but you probably already heard everything, so I'm also not going to lecture you. Nor will I shame you for making a choice that doesn't impact me in any way. You do you, baby. However, health is largely not an appearance, and you largely cannot tell how healthy someone is or is not based on the way that they look. This seems like common sense. I'm starting to worry that it isn't. You do not know if someone is healthy based on the way they look or based on a number that shows up on the scale unless they are on the very extreme ends of the spectrum, like morbidly obese or extremely thin. And most people do not fall in those categories. Most people are somewhere in between. And if you have ideas about what's healthy and what's not based on appearance, you're a big dummy. You may be being a bit of a dummy. Doctors have been using BMI, which you probably heard of, the body mass index scale, since it was invented in the 1800s. I think it was around 1850, which is essentially a chart that just combines how much you weigh with your height to sort of figure out how much you should weigh ideally. BMI is still regularly used, but there are a lot of issues with it, being that it doesn't account for muscle mass or bone density. Major athletes rank as obese on the BMI scale. And technically there can be some truth to that, because for the record, if you have far too much muscle mass for your height, that can also be very bad on your vital organs. It can be very difficult for your heart. It can be very difficult for your lungs to sustain that amount of weight. It's just that nobody talks about it when it's muscle rather than fat. When I weighed 165 pounds about a year ago, I was much larger than I am now. My BMI was only 3 points off of overweight. And so even though I technically wasn't in the obese category or the overweight category, people were still calling me fat. But I was also the fittest I've ever been in my entire life. Far fitter than I am now at around 135 pounds. I gained the weight for a boxing match. I was exercising 3 hours a day. I was eating almost entirely protein. I was running for miles for the first time in years. I was really only consuming things that would fuel the amount of exercise that I needed to do. I was so fit and doubt I will ever be that fit
ever again. And yet because I was larger, the perception from people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about was that I was fat and I should lose weight. It's that simple.
It is time to talk about rocket money. Also, the background is different because I am in my family's place in Australia. And one thing that I'm actually doing here with my family right now is trying to help them cancel some subscriptions. It timed out very well that we're talking about Rocket Money today because they are today's sponsor, and Rocket Money is here to help. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lower your bills, and manage your money better. Like I said, I'm currently using it to help my family cancel some unwanted subscriptions because, wow, do they have way more of them than they should. But rather than going through their finances and trying to figure out one by one, Rocket Money safely and securely identifies recurring charges and cancels unwanted subscriptions for you. I'm also using Rocket Money too, and this is incredibly cool, lower bills. Simply by uploading a photo of whatever bill you have and then tapping a few buttons, Rocket Money can renegotiate your bills for you, from internet service to cable to phone bills. It is seriously impressive. As is evidenced by the fact that Rocket Money has helped save its customers up to $740 a year. So, to save more and spend less, join 5 million members already using Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/Alanah or use the link in the description to get started for free. You can also unlock even more features with premium. That's rocketmoney.com/Alanah to get started for free.
This is Olympic athlete Alanah Ma. She weighs 200 pounds. She is the same height as me. She is an Olympic athlete. She's made a bunch of really, really fun Olympic content. I highly recommend checking her out. I think she's really cool. But this right here is somebody specifically, and I've seen a bunch of hate comments, people calling her fat or saying that she can't really be an athlete or that she eats too many carbs. This is a really good clip from her, among many, from a commenter saying, I bet that person has a 30% BMI.
Hi, thank you for this comment. I think you were trying to roast me, but this is actually a fact. I do have a BMI of 30. Well, 29.3 to be more exact. I've been considered overweight my whole life.
Olympic athlete.
In middle school, elementary school, high school, I was always considered overweight. I remember vividly one time in high school, I did turn in the physical to the office, and right at the bottom of the page, it said overweight. And I was so embarrassed to turn that in and to have that written there. I chatted with my dietitian. We talked about BMI, and we talked about how it really isn't helpful for athletes. And I have about, and this is an estimate, but about 170 pounds of lean mass on me. And that BMI doesn't really tell you what I can do. It doesn't tell you what I do in the field, how fit I am. It's just a couple numbers put together.
Here's another one from Alanah.
Believe me when I say I'm 200 pounds, so I wanted to show you all.
Cut the start off, but people don't believe that she's 200 pounds.
Don't look at my toes. Hold on. Coming up, is we're loading. 199.8. So I usually fluctuate between 200 to say 194. And when I was younger and as I was growing up, I always wanted that number to be smaller. And even sometimes I look at that number and I want it to be smaller. But I've come to learn that number just tells a very small part of people's stories and who you are. I'm 200 pounds, but I still am extremely fit, extremely fast, extremely strong. And it
way more than most people
define who I am as a player, what that number says on the scale.
Here's another example of a woman who weighs around 200 pounds before weight loss and after weight loss. How does that work? She hasn't lost weight. This is really common. I've seen so many examples of this picture. Because muscle weighs more than fat, you can have the exact same weight and look very different. Her body looks very different between these two pictures, and she weighs the same. This is a transformation that exists, but when she steps on the scale, the number is exactly the same. It's almost like it's not that fucking important. Have you heard of Taylor Swift? I hoped that that would be a cool slide-in, but I'm not going to redo it. Authentic. It wasn't cool. That's who I am. I don't know if you've heard of Taylor Swift, but if you haven't... Huh? She is currently doing a tour called the Eras Tour that is a global sensation causing earthquakes and impacting economies. It's enormous. It's 3 hours long. It lasts 3 full hours of dancing and singing. Taylor Swift's training for the Eras Tour was that she would sing every song or the whole set list while running on a treadmill. She has a troupe of dancers who support her through the Eras Tour, also dancing for several hours per night, I presume doing vigorous workouts and warm-ups all day during the day. The people who are part of the Eras Tour are doing a lot more cardio than I am capable of doing. I have to mute this because I don't want to upset the Taylor Swift empire, but this is one of Taylor's dancers, Cam. As far as I can tell, people have grown to love Cam because he's got a lot of attitude. Sometimes Taylor will have Cam say something. He comes across as very sweet and charming. And Cam has received a shit ton of hate on the internet. Again, I'm intentionally not showing you the hateful comments from anyone who's coming for Taylor Swift, as a lot of people, of course, are talking about how he's overweight or obese. This man is so much fitter than you and I. He is doing this every single night all around the world, a professional dancer. And people still have the audacity to say that he needs to lose weight. For what? So he can dance twice as long? For what purpose does this man need to lose weight? You can't convince me that a professional dancer, again, touring the world, dancing all over the world every single night, with tons of energy, smile on his face, never shows any signs of exhaustion, dude is killing it, needs to lose weight for any reason other than because you've decided that he's overweight. Professional athlete. They come in many different shapes and forms. And you know what's crazy? Even the people that you look up to as the pinnacle of health, like the people that we look at and go, oh, that looks healthy, which are often extremely unhealthy and just showcasing different kinds of eating disorders. This is Channing Tatum in Magic Mike. Sorry. He recently spoke up about basically how awful it was to look like that. The thing that we consider to be, again, some sort of pinnacle of health, in a lot of cases is extremely unhealthy as well. It's just people only get shamed for it when they have extra fat covering their organs for some fucking reason. Tatum said it's hard to look like that, even if you do work out. To be that kind of in shape is not natural. That's not even healthy. You have to starve yourself. I don't think when you're that lean, it's actually healthy. You've seen the way that Hugh Jackman looks as Wolverine. He has spoken about having to severely dehydrate himself, in some cases even drinking red wine in order to look that way on camera, something that we look at as healthy. You're like, why don't more people look like this? This dude is paid to do it, has a whole team to do it with him, and says he can barely look like this. This is not healthy. Being really, really lean and really, really cut in a lot of cases is just as unhealthy. The people who have the really defined six-pack abs, in the cases of some, for some people is insane genetics. For most people, it is starvation and steroids and is just as unhealthy as obesity. That's right. That's what I said. People who have really, really defined six-packs can be just as unhealthy as people who are obese. I also want to touch on, dude, steroids are way more common than I think people realize they are. They are so much more widespread than you think. Majority, I would argue, of fitness influencers, especially if you see someone with big muscle mass and little cut abs, are taking steroids. And that's not even to get me started on the fucking fitness influencers who use Photoshop, because Jesus Christ, is there a ton of that too. Like people who are selling you their workout plans while also using Photoshop in every single photo they have to make themselves look different. So these people are taking steroids, starving themselves, and photoshopping, and you're still looking at them like they're healthy? What are we doing? And you know what doesn't get any comments about health in any direction, even though it is objectively very unhealthy? Frankly, almost every single naturally slim person who exists, who doesn't even exercise. They're slim, so people just assume that they eat right and exercise, even though in a lot of cases, we know they don't, and they could have far, far worse health than somebody who has a little extra body fat. Let's take popular streamer XQC, for example. This is not me shitting on XQC, to be clear. I'm sorry, Felix. I'm just using him as an example because people probably know him and what he does. Dude is like a normal physique, slim, regular looking. I doubt he gets many comments at all about being unhealthy because he is of relatively slim or average physique. XQC and many streamers like him sometimes stream for 9 hours straight. So do half of the other popular streamers that you might have heard of. And a sedentary lifestyle is considered to be very dangerous at this point. Some doctors are calling it the new smoking. Sitting is the new smoking. Humans are built to stand upright. Your heart and cardiovascular system work more effectively that way. Your bowel also functions more effectively when you are upright. When you are physically active, on the other hand, your overall energy levels and endurance improve, and your bones maintain strength. Strength? Sitting for long periods can lead to weakening and wasting away of the large leg and gluteal muscles. These large muscles are important for walking and stabilizing you. Anxiety, depression, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, varicose veins, deep vein thrombosis. There are so many examples of why sitting for long periods of time and not getting up and moving, not standing, are extremely bad for you. To the extent that I frankly think we should, if we're fat shaming, or thin shaming. Skinny shaming is also totally a thing. We should also be shaming people who are just sitting on their fucking asses for really long periods of time. Physical inactivity contributes to over 3 million preventable deaths worldwide each year. That is 6% of all deaths. It is the 4th leading cause of death due to non-communicable diseases. People like XQC, people like Asmongold, again, I'm not shitting on either of these dudes. I have friendly relationships with both of them. Broadcast what they eat every day. It's largely takeaway, fast food, things that they're getting DoorDash delivered, and that's kind of the only time in a lot of cases that they stand up that day. They just go get their food from the door, eat it, and don't work out. This is extremely unhealthy. These people are very likely extremely physically unhealthy. But nobody complains about the streamers glorifying unhealthy lifestyles or unhealthy bodies or unhealthy behavior, the same way they talk about magazines glorifying obesity because they used a plus size model. Because the point is, people complaining about those things don't actually care. They do not give a shit about health. Nobody who is telling you how much you should weigh actually gives a shit about your health. Nobody who is calling you fat on the internet actually gives a shit about your health. If they did, we'd see very, very, very different comments on the internet. How dare you show me a clip of this streamer? You're glorifying sedentary lifestyles with terrible diets that are very unhealthy. How dare you work with them, you evil brand? I don't want to see them ever again. It's literally never happened unless somebody has like some fat on their stomach. Obesity does lead to health risks later in life. You may have seen people say sumo wrestlers are healthy. That's not exactly true. Like sumo wrestlers obviously have to eat a lot. In a lot of cases, they aren't eating bad food. Sometimes they are if they just need to up their weight. They are healthy compared to other obese people in that they do a lot more exercise. Sumos still have a 10-year shorter lifespan or life expectancy than your average Japanese person. Similar to boxers, to be honest. Very, very fit, but they're taking so many blows to the head. They have shorter lifespans. Same as wrestlers. Very short lifespans. Shorter lifespans because of the activity they're doing, right? There are health risks associated with long-term obesity. My beef really here is just that there are health risks associated with half the shit the human population does, but nobody comments vast majority of the time. Nobody cares about someone sitting all day and yelling at chat. I just think anyone acting like perceived obesity is the highest possible offense is straight up virtue signaling. Basically, in case you didn't already know, muscle weighs more than fat. If you're going to the gym with the goal of I want to weigh 130 pounds, you may as well already quit. Throw the whole journey in the trash. Your goals are garbage and you should feel bad. Pay attention to how you feel. To lifting more, to running further, to increasing your stamina, to bettering your heart health. Not to a number. The number means so little about anything. Weight loss is not an insensible minor goal. That's not what I'm trying to say. But your main goal, instead of lose weight, because again, you can fully transform your body without losing any weight, should be to eat more nutrient-dense foods, to exercise an hour a day. But if you are focused on the number and focused on the weight loss, you are setting yourself up to fail. Weight fluctuates. And when it fluctuates, you're just going to feel like shit. And it does. Bodies are bodies. Humans are never going to be the same weight. There is no logic. Your life will have a series of circumstances in which your body will weigh different amounts. That it's so frivolous and pointless to even care about the number because bodies aren't math. Even if you're eating right and exercising, you can gain weight. And aiming to be under 130 pounds because that's what some loser said on the internet is just complete nonsense. Like Alanah said, I get people falling into the trap of caring about their weight. She's an Olympic athlete. She still sometimes is like, wow, I wish I didn't weigh 200 pounds. Like that was a journey for her to accept that. And she's an Olympic fucking athlete, dude. My thesis is thus. Outside of the extremes, healthy is not a number, nor is healthy an appearance. It is extremely individualized, and it is not one size fits all. The way that you carry weight is different to the way that I carry weight, is different to the way that someone else carries weight, and is different to the effects that it has on us externally and internally. 130 pounds on you is vastly different to 130 pounds on me, and I can say that for like 99.9% of the people watching, unless we have the exact same build, which almost never happens. You may as well throw the scale out and just focus on nutrient-dense foods and getting exercise and going for walks during the day and lifting some weights and finding what makes you feel best and you feel healthiest and you feel happiest. And anybody who is telling you anything about needing to weigh a certain number, or about how much weight you have, or about how healthy you are or are not, is full of shit, unless they're a doctor. Even some of those are full of shit, though, to be honest. Everybody's full of shit.